Welcome to 9394, a music podcast. I'm Travis, and I'm really excited today. Not just because I'm happy to talk to Kandice Morrissette about the album Under the Pink from Tori Amos. This is my 50th episode. Hooray! I'm excited. It's pretty good news. And it won't be long before I hit my first full year of doing this show. And so I just want to say thanks to you for listening. It means a lot to me that you are listening. I wouldn't do this podcast if no one listened, so it's integral that you play your part. So thank you. Here is me and Kandice talking about this seminal album, Under the Pink.
Someone's knocking on my kitchen door. Leave the wood outside. What? All the girls here are freezing cold. Leave me with your body. Oh, I said I don't need much to keep me warm. And don't stop now. What you doing? What you doing, my ugly one? Bring them all here, all to hide out. 100 girls in your hair. It won't be fair if I hate her. If I hate her, you can go now. You can go now. You're already in there.
Hello. Can you hear me? Maybe you can hear me, but I cannot hear you. But I do like your shirt. I can read lips, and you said thank you. Maybe you're muted?
Try this again.
There we go. Hi.
There we go. All right.
It goes and kiss the violets as they're waking up. Leave me with your body. Oh, I said leave me the way I was before.
I always start my podcast the same way. I ask my guests how we know each other, but in yours and my case, we have just met, and we know each other through Dustin Lentz. So I'll ask how you know Dustin.
I know Dustin through my best friend, Kate. She and him are good friends, and she showed me this podcast because he was on it, and I found a couple of other great albums that you had reviewed already, and I'm like, damn, I wish I could have done that one too, but, you know, I'm a huge Smashing Pumpkins fan, so...
That is the one that pretty much everyone has asked to do. I'm like, I'm sorry, I did it second. It was a second episode, but that's probably the biggest of the year. Yeah. I had a few people asking to do this album too, to be honest, but I'm glad you did.
Oh, really?
Yeah, a couple.
Good.
So how did you get into this album? How'd you get into Tori Amos?
Well, I've always had a piano in my life. It was like a little toy piano when I first started playing, and then I got like a little like Casio keyboard, and then finally like a full-size keyboard. And I'm not like a great pianist, but, you know, I know how to play. Mm-hmm. But that's always been like the instrument I go back to. I mean, I played saxophone in marching band for many years, but like anytime like I'm like, oh, I need to transpose this, I'm going to go back to my keyboard. I'm going to do it on that. It's like my default setting is the piano. Uh-huh. So coming in the grunge era, it was amazing to have someone who is sitting at a piano and not just playing classical music. She's talking about the topic she's talking about, the stories of her songs. It pulled me in, and there was an anger in there that, you know, my angsty teenage self was really like, you know, like, oh, I could channel this through this, and I could be angry on a piano. And like, there were many times when like I was frustrated and like had too many emotions, and I would go to my own piano just to like play something angry, and like, okay, that's better. But, like her, and then like Fiona Apple, there was just a resurgence of like female artists who were just sitting in front of like a band and a guitar, but making their own music with an instrument that I knew and loved.
Piano driven, yeah.
Yeah, piano driven. Like not just like, oh, it's a piano song. No, this is a piano driven musician.
I have two great regrets from growing up in the house that I did. I grew up in Michigan, and I should be a huge hockey fan. I grew up with a pond in my backyard that's like perfectly hockey sized, but I never learned to ice skate because I like fell through the ice when I was really small, and I was like, nope, I'm good. I'm never doing that again. So I never learned how to ice skate despite having like a perfect pond for it. And I grew up with a honky tonk piano in my house and never learned to play, which was just a waste, really dumb. We didn't tune it. It was just kind of like this prop that was just like in our house. And I regret not having that. And I kind of envy that you were able to have that experience, because a lot of people that I know that learned to play piano early grew up to be multi-instrumentalists like you seem to be.
Like I said, I was in marching band. I started in band when I was in fifth grade. And when I got older, I was slightly disappointed because my band director was just like, if you want to play saxophone, play saxophone. But most other places were like, no, play clarinet first, then play saxophone.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, man, I wish I could have played clarinet first because I could have learned that. Like, I wanted to learn the instruments. Like, I'd
Mm-hmm.
always be asking my friends, like, hey, can I play your instrument? I'm not great with brass. I tried. It was just not my thing. But like, like it was just fun.
Yeah.
So like, I always come back to it. I still have, I don't have my tenor saxophone anymore because I donated it to a former band friend who is now a band teacher and needed instruments. I'm like, well, I'm not using it. Take mine.
That's
But
cool.
I wouldn't give up my keyboard.
So my mail person always comes at the same time every day, which is a little after 11 o'clock, and my dogs get very excited about it. That's what just happened.
Well, I have forgotten to feed my cats, so they will be bugging me relentlessly.
Okay, well, we'll
I will
include
pay the
them.
tax.
If they start meowing, we'll definitely include them. Oh, look at this giant fuzzy baby. Oh my
He's
goodness.
huge. Yep.
Is that a Maine Coon? Or is he just really big?
He's a Maine Coon. Yeah.
Okay, that's what I thought.
He's a big boy.
He is. He's pretty.
Well, since I've had like him, the other one's equally as big. And I'm like, now I want just big fluffy cats. I can't handle small cats anymore.
I did like the opposite thing with dogs. I had big dogs, and then as I've gotten older, every time the breed gets a little bit smaller.
Well, I mean, the big dogs are so hard to handle.
That's it, exactly. So do you still play any instruments?
I still play piano. I sit down every once in a while, take out some of my old piano books, played a couple of favorites, but like it's for me.
Yeah.
I was taking lessons for a while and they're like, oh, we're gonna have you do a recital. I'm like, I'm in my 30s. That's weird. These are children, and these children are playing better than I am. And it was the most terrifying, horrible thing for me. I did not enjoy it. I got too anxious. My first song, I like screwed up and I apologized and I kept going. And my teacher's just kind of like, next time I think you should take a shot before you go on stage. I'm like, gee, thanks. Now it's just for me.
Right on.
I don't believe I went too far. I said I was willing. She said she knew what my book did not. I thought she knew what's up. Past the mission, behind the prison door. Past the mission, I once knew a hot girl. Past the mission, the closing every hour. Past the mission, and I smell the roses.
So you're wearing a Nine Inch Nails shirt. I did not know that Trent Reznor appears on this album. He is so subtle on it.
He's very subtle on it. Yeah, that's one of my favorite songs of this album. It was my way of trying to get some of my male friends into Tori Amos. I'm like, hey, this song has Trent Reznor in it,
Yeah.
But you hear like hints of the band Nine Inch Nails in a lot of her songs, and Precious Things on her first album. She actually says, with her 9 Inch Nails.
Oh,
And then on another song in Boys for Pele, I built my own pretty hate machine.
okay. So they're friends. She's a fan.
Past the mission, behind the prison door. Past the mission, I once knew a hot girl. Past the mission, the closing every hour. Past the mission, I smell the roses.
There was a live VHS that I had from one of her concerts, and Maynard actually comes out and sings one of the songs with her.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
So she was friends with a lot of people in that era, but I think she referenced him a lot. And I think I have found a couple of references to her in some of his music, but it's been so long I've lost where those were.
Right on. So you said that Past the Mission is one of your favorite songs on the album. What's your favorite song on the album?
I have to say Icicle. selfishly, it was one of the few that I was able to play. Like, I love Tori Amos. I don't have her skill. She is a piano prodigy, so I don't have the skill that she does. But Icicle was slow, and it's something I could learn how to play. And I like the slowness of the song, and I learned that it's about masturbation.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just kind of like, I liked how she was able to like dance around the topic a little bit. It's just like, it's something I could play in front of my mother, and she wouldn't realize it was a song about masturbation. But it's just that's sort of like, her whole explanation of the song was, my father, who was a minister, is having his other minister friends over, and I'm upstairs doing my thing, and it's just sort of like the scandal of it.
Mm-hmm.
Icicle, icicle, where are you going? Where are you going? Icicle, icicle, where are you going? I have a hiding place when spring marches in. Will you keep watch for me? I hear them calling. Gonna lay down. Gonna lay down.
It's that sort of like scandal of it that like appeals to my brain, which is kind of like, aha, how scandalous this is. You're sneaking around and doing scandalous things and right in front of people.
Yeah, there's a dualism to it, right? There's a
dualism to it,
sacred and profane, if you will.
Yep, exactly. And that's what I liked about it. It's something I started liking later. I'm just kind of like, of course I liked God because I was an angsty teenager and a little angsty atheist. I'm like, God, sometimes you just don't come through. And I'm like, yes, exactly. That's not what the song was about, but that's what I gravitated towards. But like, as I started, listening to it as I was older, I'm like, no, this is the song that I'm into.
I, of course, heard this album back in the day, but I had not spent any time with it really until the last week or so. And I knew the singles, and I had heard of Icicle pretty much because of its subject matter. And then I listened to it for the first time, and I kind of forgot that that's what it was about until I kind of like, paid a little bit more attention to the lyrics. And I love that it's not just about masturbation. It's also about walking away from the religion of your family.
Exactly.
About, not being held to that same ideology that is being imprinted on you. Even though it's happening all around you and you're being raised in it, you can still go up and like literally be into yourself and like do your own thing, like you say. So I kind of thought it was going to be almost like a tawdry song almost, to be honest, but it's not. It's actually really empowering and like cool. Yeah, I like it. But you mentioned God. Yeah. That's my favorite song on this album.
God, sometimes you just don't come through. God, sometimes you just don't come through. You need a woman to look after you. God, sometimes you just don't come through.
God is the song that stuck out to me most when I was a kid, and as far as being a single, it's a little bit more jammy, a little bit more groovy than some of her stuff, but not like in a trying to be a single kind of way or trying to like fit in with anything kind of way. It's just the vibe that particular song has. And I like that like you say, it can kind of work in two ways. You can kind of read it like, again, almost like an agnostic or atheistic kind of thing, or it's also just kind of like, just don't come through, like just kind of like an expression of like, oh fuck, you just don't come through.
Yeah. And like, because I finally started digging into like the song meanings, what they actually meant, and not so much what my brain thought of when I was in middle school.
Yeah.
It's just more about like just telling like the masculine God, like, do you need a moment? Do you need to sit down? Like, are you okay? Let me help you out. Like, just take a breath. Like, I got this, just like bringing in the divine feminine to counterbalance the divine masculine sort of situation.
So it is more about religion and that kind of stuff than I necessarily thought.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and the video has a lot of religious iconography, but not just like, what we're used to. It uses Eastern religion, and she did a lot of research about that. And a lot of her early videos were really great. They had the same sort of director and everything, and it's just sort of almost kind of made this narrative.
Yeah, she always had a really great aesthetic on top of what she's doing musically. Visually, what she put out seemed to be always pretty catching from what I've seen.
It's so funny to be like, oh, I don't like the pictures of Boys for Paley. She's all dirty. I'm like, that's the point. She's supposed to be dirty. It's supposed to be thought-provoking. But I went over my head when I was that age. I'm like, this was nicer. She's in a pretty right dress. It's like things that are were superficial. I'm like, oh, I get it now because I'm older.
Because you're older. Now, since I haven't spent a lot of time with this album, I'm not going to myself choose what I think is a weaker song on the album or what I think is an underrated song, because I don't have that frame of reference. But if you had to pick a weakest song, a song that doesn't really stand out to you on this album, what would it be?
I've never really been a fan of Space Dog. To me, it's I like the song before it and I like the song after it, and I'm just kind of I can go next, It's
one of those.
It's just one of those. I'm just kind of it's okay, but I like the noises she's making with the piano, because in this album they tried various things, like Bells for Her, of making the piano song wrong or rolling different things over the strings of the piano to make it sound different, and then led to Boys for Paley, where she starts putting harpsichords through guitar pedals, And
cool.
I like that she was doing that, but I'm the song just doesn't do anything for me.
There's a couple tracks in the album that I felt were a little weaker than the other, whether I'm going to name them or not. And that was one that I thought it gets really strong by the end of the song, but it kind of starts off a little jarring or something. But I do like the end of it, but I can definitely appreciate that being, that's the thing. Even with some of your favorite albums, it's hard to listen to every song and be like, this one's excellent, this one's excellent. It's pretty rare that I have a guest on or that I myself have an album on where I'm like, I can't choose one. Usually, if we're honest with ourselves, there's at least one.
Yeah, there's at least one. Even Melancholy, Infinite Sadness, of all those 28 tracks, I have a favorite. It's just
yeah.
Even though there's too many to choose from, I'm just no, there's a favorite. I have a favorite kid on that album.
There's always going to be a standout for the better and for the worse. But what about, okay, so then in the middle there, there's different ways that we can interpret what it means for something to be underrated. Is it underrated by you? Is it underrated by listeners? But if you had to pick an underrated song on this album, what do you think it would be?
I think it's Bells for Her.
And through the life force and there goes a friend. On her knees she gets out of time, and through the porthole they can make amends. Hey, would you say whatever will blanket friends? Can't stop what's coming, can't stop what is on its way.
I've always liked it, but again, the piano is very almost discordant and ethereal.
Yes,
and that's what drew me to it. There are 3 songs on this album that are about women fighting against each other. So Cornflake Girl's one of them, which is just kind of the audacity. What do you mean? the waitress is the anger about it. It's just like, I want to kill this waitress. But I believe in peace, bitch, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
But bells for her is when the ego steps away and the spirit comes in. It's like, wait, this person is my best friend. I love this person. There's no way this is over. How could this be over? And it's like that loss of a friendship, and at my age, I had not experienced anything to that level at that time.
Mm-hmm.
And so it hits differently now. And like, I think people might skip over it to go to Past the Mission or Cornflake Girl, but I still think it's a great song.
Blanket girls always there through that and this. There's nothing we cannot ever fix. I said, can't stop what's coming, can't stop what is on its way.
Yeah, you use the word ethereal. That's definitely one that could be used to describe that song. And it is surrounded by songs that are a little bit more upbeat and catchy. And then you kind of have this kind of song that's very haunting.
Yes.
And almost uncomfortable. You said discordant too. Like, it's almost unpleasant almost to sit in. Maybe that's not the right word, but it's like challenging in a way that some of her other songs are not. Just musically, not necessarily lyrically.
Yeah. And it's just like in the chorus, like, you can't stop what's coming. Like, you've already had the fight. You've already had these actions. You've said the words you didn't want to say, and you can't take them back.
Yeah.
So that finality.
Yeah. Which that's something that anyone, I think, can relate it to once you've had some time in your life. The loss of a friend is a weird sort of mourning.
Yeah.
The loss of a friend, like, by choice, not like,
Yeah. It's just like, it's like you have to mourn the loss of that friendship, but that person's still alive, and like they might still be in your peripheral. You still hear about their life, and it's just like, I'm not part of that. I'm happy for them, but I'm not part of that. And like, that pain is always going to be there. Which
is maybe why it's one of the most, I think, painful kind of songs on the album.
Exactly.
Now, you mentioned Cornflake Girl. Cornflake Girl was the big hit from the album, much covered. How do you feel about that song? I feel like we can't talk about the album without at least talking about it a little bit.
Never was a cornflake girl. Thought that was a good solution, hanging with the raisin girls. She's gone to the other side, giving us a yo-heave-ho. Things are getting kind of gross, and I go at sleepy time. This is not really, this is not really happening. You bet your life it is. You bet your life it is. Honey, you bet your life it's a peel out the watchword. Just peel out the watchword.
No, it's one of my favorites. I mean, like, it got played a little too much. So, like, for me, it's just kind of like, I've heard this 8,000 times, so I can skip over. But, again, she was talking about how even the women closest to you could be your ones that betray you. Because, again, she was talking about being raised in a very religious household. So if she told, like, her sister secret, her sister might go and tell her mother or her father, and it's just sort of like the betrayal of trust with another woman or another person. And, again, that's part of that 3-part series of, betrayal, anger, and I wouldn't say acceptance, but loss.
It's got to be the most catchy and upbeat and popular song about female genital mutilation out there.
Exactly.
But again, like, she couches the stuff, this really heavy content, in such relatable lyrics, because in no way does that song sound like, there's nothing African or something going on. Like, you know what I mean? There's not these references that Westerners aren't going to get. It's all put in this really kind of way that anyone could relate to, man or woman or whatever, which is, I think, part of her power and part of her draw is that she seems to be really adept at tackling major issues and making them relatable and understandable.
Exactly. And, you don't know you're listening about genital mutilation at all. Like, I didn't know that for years. I mean, I knew that one like a couple of years ago, but I'm just kind of like, oh, there it is. You know, it's like it takes a second. Like,
Yeah.
she hides the story well, but it's in plain sight.
Yeah, and it's rare that you have someone who's a virtuoso at piano, like you say, and that
Yeah.
could also be so skilled at singing and then so skilled at lyric writing. It's, you know, often it'll be one or two out of those three, and it makes sense that she would get to the level that she's at. 'Cause I know that she like started off at Juilliard, I want to say, or
No, Peabody.
Peabody. Okay, but she was
Yeah.
classically trained, right? And then just like took her own path, but you got to respect that.
Yeah, well, that's another partner related to her. Is like she started when she was 5, and then by the time she was 11, she's just like, I don't want to be in this like cookie cutter. I like improvisation, all this other stuff, and she was really good at picking up music and playing it by ear. But sight reading, she was terrible, and that's me. I'm like, if I hear a song, I can play it much better if we're reading the music and everything. But just like sitting down, and I'm like, it doesn't play until I hear it in my ears. So it's So I related to her now.
Yeah, it's hard to read music. I mean, I tried to learn it as a kid. I learned it some as a kid. It's like it's beyond like a language. It's like cryptography or something to me. It's hard.
It is, and that's when I was younger. I had like my little Casio keyboard. They put the letters on it, and the notes had the letters in them. So I was able, I learned it that way.
That's good.
I'm left-hand dominant, so I start learning to play all these, not intricate, but these songs that have the dexterity in my left hand. And then I go to play a two-handed situation, and my right hand has no idea what it's doing. My left hand's like, no, let me do it for you. And it's just, I had a big learning curve when it came to that point. This was the album that I listened to in my bedroom a lot. So that's why I offered it, because I'm like, this was the Tori Amos album that really made me fall in love with her, because it was the only one I had. Because, back in those days, like you had what you had and you had available, or what your friends could do a mixtape of. But this is what made me absolutely fall in love with her. And I just, it's one of my favorites.
And sometimes I actually long for those days, which is crazy, because during that time I was like, I wish I had access to every album ever all at once, But now part of me is like, all of these options, I don't necessarily spend the time with albums that I used to. It used to be, you'd buy an album, and since you had so few others, you'd wear it the fuck out, especially if you loved it.
Oh, yeah.
And now if I wear an album out that's new to me anyway, it's like, I've listened to it like 20, 30 times as opposed to, 2,000, 3,000. Exactly.
Because there's still just like, there's something safe about being in my bedroom with my CDs, and that's just me, and that's it. There's nothing else in there but me and the music, and escaping and having the door closed and escaping from everything else, and it's just my sanctuary. And this was one of the sanctuary albums.
I'm guessing you're about my age. I'm guessing you were born in about 1980?
82.
82. Okay, so I knew you were somewhere close, because this came out in, was it 93 or 94?
94.
94. So, so you would have been 12 years old, right, roughly? And that to me, like 12 to like 15, 16, the era when you are not really a child anymore, but you're not driving and your friends aren't driving. It's a time period when you are, or at least a lot of people that I know, like locked into your bedroom, completely introverted away from your family, and just really into the albums and maybe the books or whatever else that you're like obsessing over at that age. And so that's why, like, to me, 93 and 94 are such important years, because that's the age roughly that I was doing that.
Yeah. And I was a little bit later, because I did get this album when I was like 15, 16. So like I got this later than when it came out, but still it was poignant. But my favorite thing was like, oh, where's the lyric book? And just sitting there, just like staring at the lyric book. I'm like, what do these mean? What are these words?
Obsess over it, right?
Reveal me your secrets. And they didn't always reveal the secrets. You had to like really listen to it.
Yeah. And you've stuck with her? You're still a pretty big fan?
It's not that I'm not a big fan. It's just like after a while, I kind of like, I just lost track of her.
Sure.
And so like somewhere around like Scarlet's Walk, I think it's the last album that I had. And then I got into other bands and such. And then I would just hyperfixate on a band for a while. And then like, And now it's just kind of like I'm coming back and like, no, this. I think it's time. I think it's time we revisit this and then we see what else she's had. The whole album where she did cover songs of all songs done by men and songs about women from men, and then forming it from the women's perspective. It's just like, I thought that was a great album. She has like a lot of concept albums like that I haven't got to dig into yet.
Yeah, she seems very innovative. Did you ever get to see her live?
Oh, so many times. Like, This is one of the few concerts that like we were allowed to go to like by ourselves when we were like 18, 19 years old. And she toured a lot, and she is amazing live. She'll have one piano on one side, one on the other side, and we'll just straddle her stool and just play them both at the same time, or play an organ up here.
Wow.
And she does not sit still. That was another thing. It was such a powerful performance just to watch her be so present and focused, and she is making the music and she's part of the music, and it's just like you just stare the whole time like, oh my God.
Yeah, she must be such a dynamo then, to be this productive and doing all that, playing multiple instruments at once. That blows my mind. That's very cool.
Yeah, like I'm like, oh, that's my goal, and I'm like, you got to be really good at playing one instrument before you try putting two on.
I mean, we can't all be Tori Amos, I guess.
No. I get it. She has that skill. That is not a skill I possess, but I will forever yearn for it.
What song do you want to use to go out on for this episode?
Let's do "It's a Pretty Good Year."
What a great song. Really kind of an understated song. And I didn't realize it was a single. I don't really remember it being a single, but
it wasn't a single in the US. That's why it was a UK single.
Well, that explains that. Okay. Yeah. That's what I get from my cursory Wikipedia glance. I should have read more deeply.
I've been diving in the last couple of days, so I'm fresh in it.
So I always end my show with a question about the 90s generally, or typically that's what I end the show with. So I've got a question for you. I've got 10 artists here and a list of 10 different artists, all of whom were releasing music in the 90s. So try and think of them just in their 90s terms, because a lot of them did stuff before and after. We can cut Tori out of the equation because we've talked about her and I know that you're a big fan. I'm going to give you 10 names of musicians that are known for playing the piano. And if you can, give me your top 3 out of these people. And in order, if you can, I'll give you time to think about it. Sound good?
Yeah.
Okay. So in alphabetical order, we have Fiona Apple, who you've already mentioned. Harry Connick Jr. was pretty big in the 90s. Ben Folds of the Ben Folds 5. Bruce Hornsby. Billy Joel. Elton John was releasing stuff in the 90s. Sarah McLachlan was pretty big. We don't hear much about her these days, but God, she was big for a while in the early mid-90s. My next name is a little bit of a cheat, but I wanted 10 names because I don't feel like she's necessarily associated with the piano, but I know that she plays it. Natalie Merchant, she was, she did solo stuff and with the 10,000 Maniacs, definitely piano adjacent at least, but probably the least piano-y on this list. Trent Reznor, as we've also already discussed.
Yep.
And Warren Zevon. So I'll read them again real quickly for it. Fiona Apple, Harry Connick Jr., Ben Folds, Bruce Hornsby, Billy Joel, Elton John, Sarah McLachlan, Natalie Merchant, Trent Reznor, Warren Zevon. Top 3.
Okay. Piano-wise, it's going to be Fiona Apple, number 1, after Tori.
I had a feeling since you mentioned it earlier.
Oh, yeah. No, it's just like, I got broken up and I'm very angry about it. There's an entire album that I listened to just for that purpose.
Locked and loaded and ready.
Just kind of like, it's sad time. Let's put this album on. And that is one I will listen all the way through because I need to go through all of these emotions at once. Ben Folds, absolutely love him. He was a great sort of like another person like playing piano. And I actually have a playlist on my Spotify that is When Pianos Try to Be Guitars, which is one of Tori Amos's lyrics. And it is Tori, Fiona, and Ben Folds, like from that era.
That's funny.
And you threw me for a loop because like I love both Sarah McLachlan and Trent Reznor. And it is very hard for me to pick between the two of them, especially when it's like, and this sort of like musical genre signs, obviously if I wanted harder stuff, I'd go for Trent. And, Sarah McLachlan is also fantastic in what she does. Yeah, so I would have to put them as a tie for third. I cannot pick one over the other. I'm like, that hurts my brain.
I'll allow it. I'll allow it. I'd have to say in number 3, I'd put Ben Folds. That first Ben Folds 5 album to me is one of those albums. If I ever need to like just dance or like move or like feel good, put on Jackson Cannery and that song alone will get me going. And so definitely I gotta give it up to Ben Folds. I'm a huge Bruce Hornsby fan. Oh shoot. Actually, I forgot about Billy. Damn. I think I might have to kick Ben Folds for Billy Joel. Even though all he did in the
Yeah.
90s was River of Dreams, he's Billy fucking Joel. So I'm going to put him at number 3.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then I'll put Bruce Hornsby at 2 because even though the 90s kind of sucked for Bruce Hornsby, he released this album in 1999 called The Spirit Trail. That it's a double album that I'm obsessed with and have been for the last year or two. And I'm a huge Warren Zevon fan, which I mentioned him on the show like as much as I possibly can. So I don't need to go into him anymore. But I've always loved the piano and artists that can make rock and roll with the piano. And I feel like that's kind of, I mean, I don't know, maybe I don't listen to a lot of new music anymore. I'm pretty stuck in albums from 30 years ago.
Oh, yeah.
This one, Under the Pink, it's about to hit its exact 30-year anniversary. Didn't mention
January 31st.
Yep. We're recording this right before the anniversary, and it'll probably be released shortly after the anniversary. So we're in that vicinity.
Happy anniversary.
Happy anniversary, Under the Pink. Yeah, I like the rock and roll piano style. So long as it's not like, Jerry Lee Lewis or,
Yeah. Like there's a cheese to it, and it's just like, and, I picked the ones that I picked because those are the ones I grew up with. I'm like, yeah, Billy Joel was amazing. Elton John is amazing. They're great performers. But like you said, like they weren't putting out as much in the 90s, and it was like not the genre I was listening to at the time.
Yeah.
And it's just like, for me now, it's like, oh, that's my dad's music that I go back to and dive into that when I'm feeling in that sort of mood.
Yeah, all 3 of the ones I mentioned, I wasn't so much listening to in the 90s. I got into as I've become an elderly person. It happens, I guess.
Yeah.
Well, Kandice, thank you so much for taking your time out of this Saturday morning to come talk to me. I definitely appreciate it. I had fun talking to you, and it's fun meeting you. Thank you.
Yeah, it was great meeting you. It was a good time. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Greggy writes letters with his birthday pen. Sometimes he's aware that they're drawing him in. Lucy was pretty, your best friend agreed. Well, still pretty good, yeah. Pretty good. Pretty good, yeah.
A big thank you to Kandice Morrissette for coming on the show. This is exactly the scenario I've been wanting to have happen since I started the show a year ago. And it's happening, finally. Strangers being like, yes, okay, I've heard your podcast. I will come on your podcast. I love when my friends come on and I get to rehash old great times that we had together and dig into that personal nostalgia. But I also love getting to talk to complete strangers and kind of draw them in and like get them talking about something that they love and that they're passionate about, especially when they kind of get outside of their comfort zone a little bit, like when they're not podcasters. I love it. So thank you, Kandice. She already said she's coming back and I'm excited for that. You too could come on 93, 94 if you want to, or maybe you know someone who would be a good fit for the show. You could do any album from 93, 94 that I haven't already done before, like perhaps maybe the album Hips and Makers from Kristen Hirsch from 1994.
I think last night you were driving circles around me. I think last night you were driving circles around me. I think last night you were driving circles around me. I can't drink this coffee till I put you in my closet.
The single from that album, Your Ghost, featured Michael Stipe, and it was a fucking banger if there ever was one in my opinion. And I remember having the album. I'd love to get back into it with somebody and talk about it. But again, you can pick any album you want. This is just a suggestion and also an opportunity to maybe turn someone onto an artist they're not familiar with. Kristen Hirsch is from Throwing Muses, and maybe you're familiar with them, maybe you're familiar with their work. That's a suggestion. Anyway, if you want to come on the show or if you just want to reach out and say hi, I would like that. My email address is 9394podcast@gmail.com. Drop me a line. I'm on Facebook. And I'm on other social media, but I don't really check it that often. I don't even really check the Facebook that often, to be honest with you. But it exists. I post there. It happens. Yeah. I think that's all I have to say today. Thanks. Bye. 9394, a music podcast with Travis Roy, is a labor of love. It is not and never will be monetized. Please don't sue.